and welcome to the Think MHK Podcast presented by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. On this podcast, you will hear from a variety of people from across the region, including community leaders and business owners. You will hear their Manhattan stories and hopefully get to know your friends and business associates a little better. Thanks for tuning in today. We have a very special guest on our Think MHK podcast today, the 15th president of Kansas State University, Dr. Richard Linton. Dr. Linton, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jason. It's great to be with you this morning.
It's good to have you, and thank you for being in our studios here. So we always ask our guests to talk a little bit about their history and where they came from and how you ended up in Manhattan.
Well, originally grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, and then ended up going to college and found my way into getting a degree in agriculture, a PhD in agriculture, and decided to get involved in higher education. This is my fifth land-grant university in my journey. I spent 9.5 years at Virginia Tech getting my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD degree. Then I moved on to Purdue University, where I was an assistant, associate, and full professor, and also led a center called the Center for Food Safety Engineering at Purdue, and then went from Purdue to the Ohio State University, where I was the department chair for a couple of years, and then 10 years at North Carolina State as the dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, before coming to Manhattan 3.5 years ago to be president of Kansas State.
And so before we were talking, you were highlighting for us your family. So your wife lives here with you?
Yep, the First Lady, Sally, which she's just a great partner, I think, for a university president, and I think a great partner for Manhattan. And then I have two children that are also both at Kansas State University. My daughter will be entering this fall semester in a master's degree program in marriage and family counseling, and my son will be a sophomore in the business school.
You helped the enrollment right there.
We
right?
are K-Staters, full and full.
So you are what I would call a food scientist, right? I mean, that's what you are. So what made you decide to get into that as a career?
So I was a biology major as an undergrad at Virginia Tech, and I used to like to study with this girl a lot. And we would negotiate and take different classes, and I convinced her to take a human genetics class, and she convinced me to take a class in food microbiology. And I will say the third lecture I had in that food microbiology course, I knew I wanted to be a food microbiologist and a food scientist. It was just the way the instructor taught the course and just how much curiosity that I had in it. Ironically, the girl that I used to study with, she's now a human geneticist out at NIH in Columbia, Maryland.
So what made you decide to, instead of going into industry, say, well, I think I'm going to stay in higher education and pursue a career in higher ed?
Yeah, I think if you would ask all my classmates back when I was in graduate school, they would say that I was probably the most likely to work with industry and to be involved on the business side of things. That's the way in which I thought, and worked back when I was in graduate school. But my major advisor, Merle Pearson, came up to me about 1 year away from when I was getting ready to finish with my PhD. And he said, he says, I really think you ought to be in higher education. He says, I think you've got a lot to give to that profession. And he said, he just thought that I could do a lot from a faculty perspective, and he also saw potential in administration. So he sat down and he kind of convinced me to take a look at it, and I haven't looked back. Because
food scientists are very important in terms of being able to feed the world and those kind of things. And so that was kind of where you were leaning initially, but ultimately decided that higher ed was the thing.
Yeah, and I learned too that being a food scientist, you can still work with industry. And so when I was at Purdue University for 18 years, as an example, I certainly taught classes. I did research in the laboratory and had graduate students. But about half of my time, I worked with the food industry, the food manufacturing industry and the retail food industry. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. I was contributing in a higher education perspective, but I still had the chance to be able to work with the food industry. And I knew at any time I could make that transition to the food industry if I wanted to. But as it turns out, I stuck with higher education.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the research enterprise and how higher education benefits from that here in a minute. But so you decided, based on a mentor, to stay in higher ed and kind of look forward to maybe some administrative opportunities. Did you ever at some point go, my goal is to be university president? Or did you just say, well, we'll see what happens and I'll continue to move up where that opportunity arises?
26 years ago, I determined that I wanted to be a university president and actually drew a diagram about the journey that I would need to take to be a university president, going from a faculty member to a department head to a dean, and ultimately to a university president. And in that diagram, identified places that I would go to be able to build a skill set to be successful as a president. And then there were 6 universities at the end of this journey diagram that I would think about becoming a university president. They were all traditional and foundational land-grant universities, and Kansas State was on that list 26 years ago.
Yeah, first land grant, right? It's Kansas State's first land grant.
That's right.
So other than, you talked a little about it, so you obviously at the time recognized Kansas State as being a place that you would want to consider. But as you went through that process and interviewed and those kind of things, what was it about Kansas State that was attractive to you to make this first step into being a president?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So when I was at Purdue, I had an 11 or 12-year project where I'd go back and forth, and I would come to Kansas State and I would work with the people here, and always enjoyed the interactions that I had here. And when the job announcement came out, when I was still at NC State for the president's job here at K-State, I ignored it a couple times. The search committee reached out to me, and I told them, I just wasn't done. I had a few things left at North Carolina State that I wanted to accomplish. And then former Senator Pat Roberts reached out to me. He was on the search committee. He had met me about 20 years ago for 20 minutes. And he asked me the question, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I told him I wanted to be a university president. Somehow, he remembered that. He remembered me. He called me. I think I had a day to be able to put all my materials together, but his phone call made a big difference. The fact that he remembered me and remembered what I wanted to do kind of later in life. And 3 weeks later and 3 interviews later, here I am named president of Kansas State University. So it happened very, very quickly without a lot of preparation on the beginning part of that.
Yeah. And I remember you telling the story to me when you started, and we just talked about you've been here 4.5 years now, which doesn't seem possible. In some ways, of course, it's kind of like me. I've been here 6 years, and some days it feels like a blur.
Years, you know?
Sometimes it feels long. But Manhattan had changed a lot from the time when you came. We were coming consistently with Purdue, and you talked about kind of the remarkable transformation that the community had made.
It really has changed. When I came 20 years ago to Manhattan, we would fly in and out of Manhattan from West Lafayette because we had an aviation program at Purdue. So I didn't drive. So I never even knew about the Flint Hills and didn't really pay attention when I was in town to be able to look, in the outskirts to be able to see what the Flint Hills were all about. But I only remember there being one major hotel in town, and that was the 4 Point Sheraton, and that's where we all stayed when we had an overnight.
It was probably a Holidome back then.
I think it was the Holidome.
Yeah.
It had a swimming pool in the middle, if I remember. And when I was involved in the interview process, I interviewed by Zoom. I interviewed in Kansas City, and I interviewed in Topeka, but we were not able to come to campus. They were trying to keep this confidential. And I can remember after taking the job and coming to Manhattan on February the 14th. For the first day on the job, I couldn't believe how much Manhattan had changed and had grown as a community. It was a really great thing to see. And then, of course, you explore the first couple of weekends and you learn about these incredible things called the Flint Hills. Yep. And it's a really special place. Yeah.
So, in other words, happy Valentine's Day, honey. We're moving to Kansas. So in retrospect, Jason, I probably should have come on the 16th of February for 2 reasons. That is the anniversary of the university. That would have been a really great day to start. That would have been great.
And leaving, so I actually left my wife in Raleigh, North Carolina. She didn't join me until August, but leaving her the day before Valentine's Day, not a smart thing to do.
Probably not. I have my own Valentine's story moving to Manhattan that I don't know that I've ever told on the podcast, but I was here in the interim between the time I got hired to the time my first day was. And I think I was actually here for the annual meeting, which we talked about the first weekend you were here was our annual meeting as well. And so it was Valentine's Day, and I got a call from Wayne Sloan, who was chair of the chamber at the time, who said, you got dinner plans tonight? And I said, no, I'm just going to hang out here at the hotel. He goes, oh, I'll come get you. And I go, Wayne, you need to probably take your wife to dinner. He goes, oh, no, she'll come with us. And so Wayne took his wife and I out to dinner on Valentine's Day. And so he always wishes me a happy Valentine's Day every year. So I thought that's commitment right there to to be able, actually it's commitment for his wife to be willing to give up her Valentine's Day so he could take the new guy to dinner.
Well, you know, when your wife wakes you up on Valentine's Day and she says, happy anniversary, and happy Valentine's Day, she remembers.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about that. How's the experience living in Manhattan? Obviously, you have a built-in home, so you're in a great location, by the way. But what's that experience been like, and what are some of the favorite things that you and your family like to do?
I think it's an unbelievable community, and they talk about the K-State family, and we try to describe that to prospective students and to folks that we're interviewing about just how incredible this community is. But you can't do it. You can't say it. You've actually got to feel it. And I think that's what we love so much about this community. I think it's a little bit different for the president and the first lady who do live on a home on campus, kind of in a fishbowl. And so we can't be a part of the community like a regular person. But I will tell you, all the interactions and all the activities that we do in the Manhattan community, we really enjoy it. What we enjoy the most are really two things. We like to get outside and we like to walk. We love to walk the Flint Hills, and we go out to the park to be able to do that probably 15, 20 times a year. And we walk the campus every single day, at least once, if not twice. And so this morning, we got up at 5 o'clock and started the walk at 5:20 and got back at 5 minutes to 6. And we just enjoy walking on campus and just celebrating the opportunity that both of us have in Manhattan.
And I know you host a lot of people at the Pres Res, right?
We do. Last year, we did more than 100 events each semester. So if you're doing the math and you divide that by 7 days in a week, it averages out to about one event per day.
Yeah.
And so that means, of course, I travel. And so that means that many days we'll do 2 or 3 events. But we feel like the president's residence is really the people's home. And we try to do everything that we can to be able to engage with faculty, staff, students, legislators, donors, friends of the community. If we feel like we can build a relationship with people, we can understand what's on their mind, what's important to them, and make positive change for K-State and make positive change for the community in which we all live.
Well, where I see that a lot is you donate a lot of those dinner experiences to a variety of charities around the community, which I think is pretty great. And so thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome.
Awesome.
I think we actually have one tomorrow night. We've got a wine pairing dinner that we did for one of these auction items at one of these events. And it's a great way to get to meet people, but it's also a great way to be able to bring philanthropy into the university to be able to help us thrive and grow.
So a little bit of business here. So you immediately jumped in and said, we're going to do a new strategic plan, which ultimately ended up being the Next Gen K-State plan. Why did you decide to go through that process, and what were the identified priorities of that?
Yeah, we needed a plan. It was clear that a lot of great things were happening at Kansas State University, but we didn't have a kind of a plan and a journey to be able to look forward and have aspirations about where we wanted to be. And so we had about a year-long process where we involved a lot of internal and external stakeholders in crafting this plan. And it's really about instilling and embracing the values of a land-grant university, which is research and teaching and the student experience and engagement, but taking it to the next level. How do we make research innovation go to the next level, where we're partnering with industry as an example and helping them thrive and grow? How do we help Kansans build an economy and a stronger economy with the research that we do? From a student perspective, we know how important student enrollment is. How do we think differently about recruiting students? And how do we think differently about what a student can look like, degree seeking or non-degree seeking? And then engagement. I learned as a dean of a college of agriculture and a land-grant university, if you can engage with every single community, it helps you understand what's important for the state, what their expectations are, but it also helps to enable you to be able to get legislative support. Legislators want to help support their local communities, and I think a lot of the projects and a lot of the success that we've had legislatively in the last couple of years has been because of the relationships that we've built. Another thing you'll notice on campus is there's a lot of construction. There's some $500 million in new construction projects. This was also kind of a big part of the Next Gen plan. Our goal is to be the best land grant we can be, but think next generationally.
Enrollment has been a hot topic over the past decade. What have the recent trends been there, and what do you expect to see over the next decade?
Yeah, I actually just looked at the scorecard this morning. Before I came, we had 8 years of constant declining enrollment, where we were down almost about 25% in our undergraduate enrollment. And so strategically, we did some things right off the bat. We raised scholarship opportunities. We raised over $200 million to be able to support in-state and out-of-state students. We did a better job with the marketing materials that we produce. We have better technology. We have better engagement with guidance counselors and students and prospective parents about this incredible K-State experience. And I'm happy to say the last couple of years, we had significant increases in both undergraduate and graduate students. I think last year we were up 14% out-of-state, 7% in-state. The trends this year are showing an equal kind of trend, heading in the right direction. But of course, there are some concerns, especially on the graduate student side for international students, with in some cases the inability of them to be able to travel and stay in the United States. So we're seeing undergraduate students up significantly, and our graduate student population right now is down just a little bit.
As I read throughout the nation, there's some demographic concerns that are coming up too, correct? That don't really, there aren't anything that K-State can do anything about. They're just things that have happened in our communities.
There's two things that are happening that we need to keep our eyes on. One is 12 years ago, 57% of high school students in Kansas went to some kind of college, 2-year, 4-year, whatever the case may be. Today, that number is 43%. So we've lost 14% of those students, and we've got to figure out how to be able to recommunicate the value of higher education for a long-term career and change some of those statistics. I think the other is the demographic cliff that you had mentioned. We're simply going to have less high school students over time. And so knowing both of those factors are in play, we have to look out of state. And so when I first came here, we were about 84% in-state and 16% out of state. Today, we're 66% in-state, 34% out of state. And that's why those scholarships become so important. If you can offer a scholarship for an out-of-state student to come in at an in-state rate or something near an in-state rate, then we've got a much larger mass and population of students that we can go after. And I think it's that kind of strategy over the last couple of years that's gained great benefits in student enrollment.
And it's not because you want more out of state. It's just there's less in-state students that are choosing to go to school.
There's less in-state students. There's a lot of competition with the other universities, both private and public, that are in the state of Kansas. And we also think about keeping our students in Kansas to be able to work and live afterwards. And if we can bring more students from the outside in and keep them in, we're providing great benefits to the workforce of Kansas.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but talk about why research is important to higher education institutions, and particularly as it relates to Kansas State.
Well, I think research provides solutions to the challenges that our stakeholders have. And a strong research university is better connected with our stakeholders, has a better relationship with our stakeholders, solves really applied problems that are important to them, but it's also a magnet and a draw to keep the great faculty that we already have, to attract incredible faculty to want to come to a thriving research institution. And it's also a major driver for parents and for students as well. So as the success in research goes, so does the success of faculty, staff, and student recruitment and retention. And it's just kind of a momentum engine that you're trying to build over time.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it'd really be impossible for Kansas State to achieve their goals academically without expanding the research capabilities.
Yeah, and we can't be successful unless we have all three things growing. The academic part and the student experience, of course, the research innovation piece, and then the engagement with stakeholders all over the state. That's how a land grant is different, and that's how a land grant thrives. If you don't have all three legs of the stool running and humming at the same time, your land grant university is not going to be what it could be.
And I know you talked a minute ago, too, about construction. Some of that construction is expanding capabilities and opportunities for private sector engagement. Where do we have those kind of opportunities coming up at Kansas State?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we learned in the strategic planning process, it was the one gap area that was the one that had the blinking red light on it, that let's do something about it now, is opportunities to be able to develop private-public partnerships with industry. So a couple of things that we're doing. We've taken the Office of Research, the elements within that office, elements within the Office of Engagement and the KSU Foundation around things like corporate engagement, intellectual property, venture capital, entrepreneurism, and economic development, and put it all together into kind of a one-stop shop for innovation. In tandem to that, we are building space over the Edge Collaborative District for private-public partnerships where you could envision faculty being there with industry representation and undergraduate students and graduate students to be able to do research and to be able to provide solutions together. And there's great examples all over the country. Purdue's a great example. Ohio State's a great example. Even the University of Nebraska, just north of us, is a great example of when you build these private-public partnerships, your research engine really starts to thrive.
And of course, Nebraska copied North Carolina State.
They did,
which you were there too. So, and I was in Nebraska when they developed that park. So,
and for me, I've seen it at other universities. I saw it built at Purdue University. I saw it in motion at NC State. We just took a group this summer up to the University of Nebraska to show them what could be. We took some legislators and we took faculty and we took some stakeholders to be able to show them what could the future be of research innovation when you partner well with industry. And a lot of energy came back from that. And so that's something we're working on, and hopefully we'll build that out over the next couple of years.
And you guys are really leaning into agriculture, obviously, with the ag innovation and all the construction going on at the College of Ag.
Yeah, so a couple of, of course, the Ag Innovation Project is a $230 million project. It's 10 different buildings. We're going to take 2 down. We're going to renovate 2, and we're going to have new capital construction for many other facilities. The first one will open up October the 10th. That's the Bilbrey Event Center, and it's a livestock event center up on top of the hill over by NBAF. This is be a transformational change for the College of Agriculture, which is so important from an economic perspective, agriculture and food systems in the state of Kansas. You'll see that with new facilities and with new equipment and the new way in which we will have people work together in interdisciplinary teams, it's going to greatly change our capacity relative to research innovation for agriculture. This past year as well, in the state legislature, we were very lucky. We were able to, we had our best year from a state legislative perspective. We gained $150.4 million in K-State projects and KBOR system projects. The big project this year was $130 million veterinary diagnostic laboratory. And now we'll have all the pieces in place with a really strong vet school, really strong animal science program, a BSL level Pat Roberts facility, NBAF with a BSL level 4 facility, now with a veterinary diagnostic laboratory. There is nowhere else in the country that will have the capabilities and capacity that K-State will have.
Yeah, and it really does give us a lot of opportunities, and people are starting to notice. And so we're on an economic development front, we're real excited about that so as well. So let's get to what a lot of people consider to be the important questions,
okay.
And that has to do with athletics. So obviously, athletics is a major part of the institution and important to the community. And I'm teasing a little bit. We obviously care about all the other things too, but how do you all adapt to the ever-changing landscape, which between NIL and revenue sharing, and how's K-State going to stay competitive in that landscape?
Well, let's just first talk about how important athletics is. Athletics from an economic perspective, if you look at K-State, the economic impact is about $2.3 billion a year. Almost $500 million is from athletics. So you're looking at between a 20 and 25% economic impact to not just K-State, the state of Kansas, but the city of Manhattan. It's more important at K-State than any other place where I've been because it's one of the only things that's happening in town at certain parts of the year. So as an example, on a fall Saturday, it's K-State football. And everybody comes together and surrounds themselves. And so it's a great support system for alumni, for our donors, for our students who have just an incredible time. And there's no better place to watch an athletic event and do the Wabash Cannonball than at Kansas State University. I just got back from the Big 12 annual meeting last week, and athletics has changed. And there's now a lot of challenges and pressure financially relative to the House settlement, which is very close to closing and being fully settled, as well as external NIL. So we now have internal name, image, and likeness, and now external name, image, and likeness. If the House settlement closes as we expect it will, it's $20.5 million that the university can provide to its athletes, and that's a cap. And of course, Kansas State University has made the decision that we will do everything we can to get to that cap.
And that's annual.
That's annual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to get to that cap each year so that we're as competitive as we can possibly be. Then on the external side, there's external NIL that you hear about all the time. That's also incredibly important. So I think it's a new day for athletics, and we're doing everything we can. We're partnering with athletics. We're partnering with the foundation. We're partnering with the Big 12 to do everything that we possibly can to bring the resources in so that K-State's as competitive as we can possibly be.
And although none of the numbers are public, it feels like Kansas State is competitive for big-time athletes.
I think we're very competitive. And if you think about it, that $20.5 million, which is across the board for all universities, that's to be distributed to all of their athletes. And because we have a lesser amount of athletes and a lesser amount of sports, I think we have about 390 athletes, that actually means more financial resources per athlete at K-State, which I think gives us a competitive advantage. But I think once these kids come to look at K-State and they come and they meet our coaches and they meet our athletic staff and they see the facilities, more than 85% of those athletes end up coming to K-State.
This is just an external, somebody outside looking in. How fortunate we were in this environment to have seen all the new facilities get built before the revenue sharing and NIL became such a major component, or it would have probably
We
been a
are so
challenge.
far ahead of most other universities in the Big 12 and most other land grants that we compete against. We're so fortunate that most of that part is done, so we can really focus on what we need to do to be able to help deal with some of the challenges we have with NIL.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So changing the subject back to a little bit more on the business side, you and your team have been very supportive of the chamber and have been engaged with us since the very beginning. Why is that relationship important to K-State, and why is it important to Manhattan?
Yeah, I think any land-grant university needs to be highly connected with the local community, especially if it's a small community like West Lafayette at Purdue University or here in Manhattan. We want to do everything we can to be able to help this community thrive and grow and be successful, because if we have a successful Manhattan community, we're able to recruit a lot better and keep people here in Manhattan. And the same thing with the relationship with Manhattan. We're hoping that Manhattan will partner with us so that we can grow as an institution and be the best land-grant university possible. But that town-gown relationship, which we're so very proud. We're ranked very high, nationally with our town-gown relationship. We just want to do everything we can to be able to foster it and to continue to make it continue to make it grow. That's why student enrollment is so important. When you think about student enrollment, it's not only important for Kansas State University, but losing 25% of students has a dramatic and impactful role on the Manhattan community, and that's something we're trying to work on and trying to solve to help our community.
Yeah, it obviously has, and we've talked many times about growth in the community and how we've been fairly stagnant in the last decade. I think there's some things that have happened recently that are going to turn those things around, but enrollment is certainly a big part of that. Fort Riley has been a big part of that. But I think between some of the activities that you all are engaged with and some of the things that we have going on in the community, I just see positive projection going forward.
Yeah, I think when we think about what we want to do for Kansas State, we always ask the question, how does this economically help Kansas, and how can this economically help the region and the city of Manhattan? I think a great example is the livestock arena. The Bilbrey Event Center, which again opens up on October the 10th. We're going to go from one rodeo to 30 to 40 events a year. Think about what that's going to do for our ability to be able to train students, our ability to be able to attract 4-H and FFA and high school students, but also think about what that's going to do to the economy here, not just in Manhattan, but for the region as well. And those are the kinds of things that just put a really big smile on our faces, because we know that we're doing the right thing for K-State and the right thing for the community.
So right after you started, about 18 months after you started, you gave us a little bit of a scare, a little bit of a health scare.
Yeah, I had a scare myself.
Yeah. So how you feeling? Everything good?
I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
100%. I had back of tongue cancer, which I spent 7 weeks in Kansas City, Monday through Friday, and was treated with radiation and chemotherapy during that time period. I'd leave Sunday night. I'd do my treatments. I'd come back Friday afternoon. I'd get back here about 12 o'clock. I averaged about 70 to 80 hours a week working still. I did everything on Zoom. My treatments were done by 8 o'clock, and I was on a Zoom call before anybody else in the office was. And then the weekends, I still had to work remotely, but I was engaged at the football games and talking to stakeholders by Zoom and those kinds of things. And very fortunate to have made it through a difficult time, and got incredible treatment from the KU health system. And I learned that a university chancellor, Doug Girard at Kansas, doesn't always have to be competing with us like we compete on the football and the basketball field. He has become an incredible colleague and an unbelievable friend, and has helped me through this entire time period. But I feel great. I can actually taste 110% of what I could taste before. I wouldn't recommend the treatment, but everything's good.
Well, as a food scientist, that's important thing,
it is,
right?
because I had no taste. Yeah. I had no taste for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's difficult.
We're glad you're feeling well.
Thank you.
So last question in our regular segment. So many, many, many years from now, when your tenure at K-State's done, how do you want to be remembered by the community and by the university?
I want people to remember me in that I cared, that I worked hard to make a difference, and I left this place in a better condition than what I received it in. If those three things happen, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're headed in that right direction. So
thank you.
Appreciate all that you do for the community and the university. So that part of the conversation's over. We're going to move to what we call the infamous part, which is the rapid fire. And
Let's go.
Everybody that comes on participates in this, and it helps us. We actually learn a whole lot more, ironically, about people in this section than we do during the regular interview. So thank you for agreeing to do that.
You're welcome.
Here we go. Do you have any hidden talents?
I do. I'm a pizza maker. I can make a pizza in 23 seconds. I used to work at a pizza place in Ocean City, New Jersey, and made about 1,200 to 1,300 pizzas a day. And I still make pizzas for my family every single month. So I love to make pizza and throw it in the air and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. And one other thing you've told me before too, you have a lot of baseball trivia knowledge, right? That's one of your other talents.
I'm a huge baseball fan. I've been to all the parks except for two. I've not been to Anaheim. I've not been to Oakland.
Okay. And you're not going to go to Oakland.
Oakland I'm going to miss. I'm going to have to wait until Vegas in 3 years. But I've also been to 200 minor league parks and college ball parks as well.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
I love baseball.
What movie have you seen the most times?
Jaws. And Jaws is actually celebrating its 50th anniversary this summer. I just love Steven Spielberg. It was one of his first and one of his greatest, and it's just a fun movie to watch.
And kind of an unexpected hit, right? If I remember correctly, the people didn't really expect that to be a big hit, and it was.
It was a huge hit.
Describe your perfect day.
Boy, my perfect day starts with getting up with my family and having a really great breakfast that we cook together. And then it's taking a walk. So if it's in Manhattan, it's maybe going to the Flint Hills or walking on campus. If it's in Colorado, which we like, the place that we like to vacation a lot, it's taking a long walk and being outdoors and being able to connect with each other. Having the dogs, if we can, would be a good thing. Spending the day together, coming back and having a wonderful dinner, either that we make at home or one that we go out and celebrate. Maybe that dinner is just with Sally, might make it a little bit more special. And then just hanging out and playing games with the kids or watching a movie. A perfect day for me, which is a hard day for me to be able to have a lot, is a day with my family that involves being with each other and doing things that we enjoy.
If you could go back in time for a day, what day would you go back to?
I don't know if it's a specific day, but a time period would be when I was a kid, maybe 6 to 9 years old. In June, my family used to go to the beach for 2 weeks. And I remember being so free on the beach, not a concern, not a worry. You just hung out with friends, and some days you rode the boogie board, other days you made sand castles. You could create, and you had total freedom. I would go back and spend a week in Ocean City, New Jersey as maybe an 8-year-old kid, hanging out with my buddies and just enjoying the time without a worry in the world.
What was your first job?
First job, I had over 100 lawns that I mowed, And I would mow the lawns from Monday until Saturday, almost all day, every day. I was at age 13, and I did that from 13 to 16, and then I actually sold my business to somebody else in the neighborhood. But I was an entrepreneur pretty much at a super young age, and I liked working hard, and I liked making money so that I could buy things for myself.
That's a fairly common answer. You might expect, we interview a lot of business people, right? And that's fairly common, is their first job is lawn mowing.
Yeah.
What skill would you most like to learn?
I would love to be able to play the piano. My son has this incredible talent where he can actually play the piano without reading music. He can do it by sight. He can do it by hearing it. And I think it's this gift that he's been given. I would love to be able to play the piano. Reading music or otherwise, I think I would have great enjoyment in that.
Yeah, my dad and brother and grandpa, actually, all three can play instruments by just listening. And for whatever reason, I'm the only person that seemed to skip.
It's an amazing talent. It's a gift.
What is the one thing that instantly makes your day better?
When somebody smiles or when somebody laughs. When I can make that happen for somebody, especially if they're laughing, I brought joy to somebody. And when I bring joy to somebody, it just reflects right back to me.
So this is a question that we actually ask a lot, but it probably means more asking you, and is, do you prefer working remotely or in the office? Because you had to work remotely for such a long time.
Yeah, I just assume be in the office.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that my office is my office. My office is doing a podcast with you today. Yeah. My office is being in the car and traveling to Dodge City to be able to meet with stakeholders. I never really enjoyed the remote parts of it during COVID, and certainly during my illness. It was the way for me to keep connected, and I was thankful to have remote access. But I need to be one-on-one with people, face-to-face.
So this could be one answer or two: your first concert and your favorite concert.
Yeah, my first concert was the farewell tour of the Doobie Brothers.
Okay.
Back in 1982, and in fact, I wore that Doobie Brothers T-shirt underneath another shirt for every single exam I took throughout college.
I got it.
So you could just imagine how that smelled during finals week, but it was my good luck shirt. But my favorite concert, I actually did a day before I came back to K-State to be announced formally as the president. I went to see the last series of concerts that Genesis did. So I'm a big Phil Collins fan. I'm a huge Genesis fan. I've seen them many times, and for me to be able to see my favorite band play one more time, again, I think we got home that night at about 1:30 for a 5:30 flight that I needed to take to come back to Manhattan, and my wife kept saying, maybe we ought to not do this. I said, no, I need to do this. I need to see Genesis one more time.
Well, good. I'm glad you got to do that. What is the one question you wish people would ask you more?
How are you?
Well, I try to ask you that all the time.
You do, but not enough people think of a president as a human being and a person, and they ask all sorts of things about the university and this issue or that issue. But every once in a while, and you do a great job, Jason, and thank you, just saying, how are you?
Well, it is maybe because I'm kind of in a similar position, because people want to talk about things that the chamber are doing all the time, or your first answer is something that, even if they say what's going on, and the first answer you give is lengthy response of what chamber activities, and you go, no, I don't want to know that. I want to know how you're doing. And so maybe because I have to run into that, I try to do that too. So, but we're glad that you came on with us today, and
I'm happy to be here. Honored to be here. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and obviously the relationship between Kansas State, the community, the chamber is so important. It has resulted in thousands of jobs and untold economic benefit. And as long as I'm here, I hope we can continue to build on that relationship.
Let's just keep a great thing going.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Think MHK, a podcast produced by the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. If you enjoyed the Think MHK podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it out on your social media channels. Feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce.